was interested in that kind of book.
You originally were not a mystery writer, and you wrote it as a fluke. Was that correct?
Yes, right.
Okay.
I wrote it for fun. I was doing very serious scholarly work. I'd done a lot of it, and I was quite well known for it. And I wanted to do something for fun. I didn't think that there would be any future in it. I just wanted to do it for fun, so I did it.
Is it still fun?
Yes.
And the advice you give to students or to other writers, I mean, now that you've a published author in this for fun field, what are the pieces of advice you can give them?
Well, the first one is the usual piece of advice. Don't quit your day job. The only reason I was able to do that was that I was very far along in my career, and I was able to just take a jump and see where I landed. But there's no guarantee in publishing nowadays, and the fact that the technology is changing so much, and that we're moving from a print culture, which is a fixed culture, nothing changes once it's in print, and now we're moving into an electronic culture, and everything is changing and shifting all the time. I don't know what the impact of that is going to be on literature. So it's a pretty iffy time, and there really are no guarantees.
You've mentioned that you have this mystery series. How many books are in that series right now?
6.
6 books.
Yeah.
And you also tried a romance, which still hasn't seen the light of day yet, and you're trying a collaboration. Where do your ideas come from for all these different genres?
Well, the romance, I wouldn't really say it's a romance. I would say, I know I did say it was a romance, right. but it's not like your typical supermarket romance.
Okay.
It's more of a tale that was based on an actual 19th century writer who published as Fanny Forrester, but her real name was Emily Judson, and her husband was a famous missionary named Adoniram Judson. He was a missionary to Burma, and he married 3 wives. The first one he married, he took to Burma, she died. He came back to the United States, got a second wife, went back to Burma, she died. Came back to New York, got a third wife, who was Emily, and took her back to Burma, and he died. So she came back to New York and made a real career for herself as a poet, and supported herself for the rest of her life under the name of Fanny Forrester. I was just fascinated with what it would be like to be a woman who had spent years in the Far East and then came back to the United States, and having been immersed in Asian culture, and then come back to the United States and live on her own as an American. And so basically that's what I was writing about. The book was very much about New York and about the New York publishing world, and about writers at that time. Even Walt Whitman makes an appearance. So.
Are most of your stories about women?
Yes.
Are women the central agent
yes.
of movement?
Yeah. I'm not sure I could write a novel with a male protagonist. However, in the Murder on the Home Front series that we're just finishing the first book of, we started out with 2 women characters. One was a nurse in New York City in 1941. The other was a reporter, one of the first women reporters at the New York Times. And we started, I mentioned before that we had given it to an agent, and at that time the 2 main characters were women. And then we realized that in 1941 there was a lot that women couldn't do, although some women did it. But there were no women on the police force, for instance. And that if this was going to be a mystery murder, we also needed to have a protagonist who was a cop. So we got a male cop who was on the cusp of retiring, and the war comes, and he's a homicide cop, and he realizes that they're not going to let him retire because all the young police officers are joining the Army. So he has to stay in the field. So the war has had a major impact on him as well. So now we've got these three characters. It works much better.
So one of the things you're saying is you really do, your central characters you think will always be women because you do better that way. So my question is, how are you capable of putting yourself in the shoes of this police officer, which you've done in your Karen series too?
Yes, right.
How do you write about guys as a woman?
Well, in the Karen series, he's not a point of view character. It's all her point of view. It's first person. And so it's him through her eyes. And he came to life in ways that I never expected. And even readers will write to me or send me pictures of men who they think are Charlie Piotrowski. One woman sent me a picture from Vancouver of a Polish Olympian who she thought was a young Piotrowski. It was just, well, okay, maybe. Piotrowski was a little rougher than that, but I thought that was just amazing that I had come up with this fantasy character who other people who had invaded other women's minds, and they were now sending me pictures of him. I thought that was a riot. I think the police officer, one interesting thing is that he's older than the two women. So now that I'm older, I enjoy writing about somebody who's been in the world for a while and had disappointments and had triumphs and understands what the stakes are in a way that young women don't.